Serious, family court lawyers, what's the most petty behavior you've seen from parents? I'm just an intern, but I once was sifting through discovery that our client provided as he was trying to win custody over his son. One of these pieces of discovery was a detailed account of the mother's timeliness. Basically, if the mother was late to pick up her son, they would time it and document it, which would make sense if it was significant, but I'm not exaggerating. Over a 6-month period, she was late for a total of 33 minutes. Seeing as they met to exchange the child 3 times a week, it means she was late by about 1 or 2 minutes once a week. It was the most insignificant piece of data that I have ever seen in my entire life, but the client was adamant that we use it in court to prove that the mother was irresponsible. Most comments here are just talking about despicable people, but this truly is the pettiest of petty. Family law legal assistant here. A client of ours included a chunk of pork in the freezer in her list of assets that she insisted she get back. The lawyer on the other side came back with respectfully, "I'm not going to argue over second-hand meat in a freezer." My GF is a family lawyer. She had a pair from Eastern Europe, we're in Ontario, who wanted a divorce. Long fight over what the husband's assets were. He claimed to be living on less than $12,000 cash a year. Wife hired a private detective. Eventually found that he was hiding another home. Won a big settlement. My GF is really happy. Note, she doesn't get a penny of the settlement or bonus or extra pay. She just liked seeing the lawyer caught. But the wife still isn't happy. Claims the husband is hiding even more money. Keeps badgering him with more legal stuff. Even though my GF is telling her you won, let it be. Then, husband hires a pie. Finds out the wife is joint owner of another house with her new boyfriend. Settlement invalidated. My GF immediately got off the record and refused to help the woman anymore. Worked in an attorney's office for a little bit. Knew about a divorce case one of the attorneys was involved in where the child had been diagnosed with a terminal disease with maybe a few years left, and the parents tried to fight over what the child's wish should be for one of those make-a-wish type of foundations. I do know the judge chewed both parents a new one when this issue came up, but ultimately could not make a call on how the wish would be granted. I believe the child ending up refusing the wish on account of the argument it caused between the parents. Just hearing about the details of this case fricked me up for a while. Not really petty but more psychotic. My dad received full custody and won everything in the divorce because my mom was diagnosed with a multitude of mental problems that she refused to take medication for, and she was an abusive alcoholic who also did more funsies. Anyways, after all that was said and done, she decided she'd show us. When we were gone, she'd break into the house and steal random crap like Tupperware lids. All of the Tupperware lids. I crap you not. We came home from school and all of the forks were gone, so we went to Walmart and bought forks. Came home with forks and all of the spoons were gone. We found out she'd been getting in through my bedroom window, so we put a lock on the window and put up security cameras. Didn't work out because 3 days later while we were gone we got her on video stealing. Yes, actually stealing the window and running down the road. Before you ask, yes, we have a restraining order. Yes, we turned the tapes over to the cops. No, you can't have a crazy person put into a mental hospital against their will unless they are a physical threat to themselves or others. Yes, she still randomly steals stuff from my dad's house. It's more of an amusement now though. You always decorate the tops of your cabinets with stuff and forget about it, so we play this game called What Used to Be There. $3,000 between me and another very good lawyer to argue about $13 month versus $30 month child support. They had 50/50 custody. The kid was 13. Even after I did the math for my client explaining they were paying me more than the difference for the entire rest of child support, they still wanted to do it. When I was a kid and my parents were divorcing, my dad filed many lawsuits against my mother for anything and everything. When I was 10 years old, he even told me he was going to take me to court in a lawsuit because I didn't want to go visit him. Client once called me with an emergency. The emergency was that his soon-to-be ex-wife fed the kid Chef Boyardee for dinner. I went to law school for this. The interim court order said that my client, the mom, was not to discuss the court proceedings with the child. During an access visit, the child asked her, "When will I get to see you again?" and my client responded, We'll have to see, but hopefully soon. The father then argued that this was discussing the court proceedings with the child and tried using it as an excuse to deny any further access. As an intern, I saw a couple have long, hateful emails about who was going to keep a unisex Armani hoodie. Almost all of their discussion centered on that one hoodie. When in the end the husband got to keep it, the wife cut holes into it which ruined it. It was pretty nice tbh. What I get from this is that if you ever divorce someone really petty, put a lot of focus on a few random items you don't actually care about. A mother actively coaching her 2 kids to say that dad was physically abusive to them. She would have gotten away with it except for 2 things. 1. The court-appointed psych managed to catch these lies out in the interview. To date longest report I have read at 280 pages. And 2. The oldest kid, then 10 I think, got annoyed at the mother for some such reason and recorded her on their cell phone, which was promptly played for dad. In the end dad got full day to daycare and mother had supervised contact for 6 months before she went to every second weekend. This is probably one of the worst things yet. This happened in January. Guy was straight out of jail, 2 years, and of course at that point, his marriage was rocky as heck. When his wife dropped his kids off to visit, he lived with his parents for parole purposes. The son said his uncle hit him. The father then filed a PFA against the wife and uncle. It was granted. Then he files for sole custody. It was granted. The kids were in his custody for about 2 months before the custody hearing. Of course, my boss threw me the file and I had to handle the mediation and last minute prep. At mediation, the father and wife sit angry-eyed. Literally, each cross-armed and furious. The other lawyer and I discuss the facts and what arrangement each client wants briefly in another room. We come out and our clients are gone. Magically, and praise the Lord. In the course of 10 minutes of me and the lawyer talking, the father and mother made out in the corner of the hallway and returned. The case was dropped. May I mention, this was pro bono, PA jurisdiction. 2. The worst I was ever a part of. In California we have certain requirements to meet before one parent can move away with the child. These requirements kick in when the other parent's visitation will be materially impacted by the move. My client is mom. She is a dental hygienist. She has kids with dentist 1 and divorces dad for dentist 2. She wants to move with the kids to dentist 2's town so she can work for him, live closer to work, etc. Dentist 2's town is a 25-minute drive away from dentist 1's town. 25 minutes. Between the 2 of them, the 2 dentists must have spent nearly $400k fighting over a 25-minute move. This was also the moment I realized I made a terrible mistake becoming a lawyer when I should have become a dentist. My first job out of law school was as a trial court staff attorney. This is basically a judicial law clerk. So we did a lot of research and advisory memos for judges. I didn't cover a family law docket, but my office mate did. She got an emergency motion in a family law case one time. For the non-lawyers, these are filed when something is extremely time sensitive and critically, like a matter of life and death, important. If the judge deems it a true emergency, your matter will be heard on an expedited basis. They'll fast track you in for a hearing, usually in a matter of days, rather than the usual weeks months it normally takes to get a hearing date. Anyhow, this particular emergency motion was to compel the ex-spouse to send their child to Happy Faces daycare, because if the child couldn't go to Happy Faces daycare, it was going to be irreparably damaged from the lack of social exposure, etc. Emergency, Happy Faces daycare, FML. Needless to say, this was not an emergency. I don't know how the motion was ultimately ruled on, other than that it wasn't an emergency. Man, my ex literally has done this 3-4 times to me. One successful time she got my son away from me for around 3 months with a lawyer postponing the court date multiple times. We're still in custody court 5 years later on and off. It sucks. Canadian family lawyer here. Many instances of pettiness. Generally, good family lawyers will call their client on their bulls. We don't want to be the lawyer standing in front of a judge over really petty things. Reputation is important. Client, my son is very mature for his age. I believe access to his mother should be per his discretion. Me, your 2-year-old son. That said, I've had people call my office yelling that my client wouldn't allow them to pick up the infant child at 10 p.m. only 4 hours late for a visit. One guy fired 2 previous lawyers and retained me to negotiate, adding 3 meaningless words to a settlement. We're talking months of intense negotiations between counsel. One parent refused to allow another parent to take kids on vacation because they wanted to take the child to Disney first, despite, not having the funds to do so. The most petty are the parents who phone CAS, Child Protection Services, or the police for every minor disagreement. Your 2-year-old cries when leaving your home? Call Child Protection Services. One guy was a total control freak. He'd gone to the Philippines and romanced his now ex-wife, brought her back to Australia and then expected her to be a slave for him, pop out his kids, etc etc. When she left him, he manipulated her into believing that they would share care of the kids, and they didn't need court orders. Then behind her back he went to court, obtained sole custody of the kids and basically cut her out. Then when she was back on her feet and could finally go back to court and try to get her kids back, he said she was a prostitute, among other things. He said the kids were learning sexualized behavior from her, despite the fact that he was living in a trailer caravan modified shipping container, something like that, with no actual walls between the kids' room and the bedroom he shared with his new partner, and the mother was living in a house with bedrooms and doors. Real nice guy. In the end, he didn't use a lawyer, so he was completely steamrolled in court. His court documents were laughable. Literally everything that had ever gone wrong with the kids was the mother's fault, and he now sees the kids once a fortnight instead of having them live with him full time. So there's a way not to do things. Also, hilariously, one of the things he said in court was that he knew when he was impregnating the mother, because he can control his ejaculation. Right. I've seen some BS pettiness, but the best story I have is actually from my guardian ad litem professor. When she was practicing, she had a client whose ex-wife was super duper specific about getting all of the children's clothes back from his house when she got the kids back from him. Like, if one sock was left behind, all heck would break loose. So this guy's solution was to make the children strip naked in the foyer and put on clothes specifically worn at his place when it was his turn to have them. Then when they went back to mom's, they had to strip naked again and change back into the clothes she sent them there in. Sounds a bit scarring for the children. Father wanted full custody of his child. Child was in full mother's custody. Child has diabetes. Both parents must fill a daily glucose intake measured by glucometer. Every time father dropped the child at mom's, he would buy a Snickers or Twix on the way there and feed it to the kid. Then we flipped out the glucose measurings during court. Due to the measurings being extremely high when the child was at mom's, we were able to get the child to the father's full custody. I didn't know what he was doing. I certainly didn't advise him to do it. He just bring it to the courthouse and ordered me to present it. Either that or that time where during divorce a guy had exact knowledge of how many toilet paper sheets his wife was overusing and how many liters of warm water she overused. Worked in a law firm dealing in family matters. Couple hammers out a separation agreement over months of meetings, mediation, letters and drafts back and forth. Ended up having to take it to court because they couldn't agree on who would get the air miles. The fricking air miles. An opposing party had to pay $2,000 in attorney's fees to his wife's lawyer, and he brought it to the office in pennies. Client's spouse of decades gets a terminal cancer diagnosis about halfway into a fairly routine medium-high asset divorce. My client is such a viciously horrible person, saying they were glad that the spouse was dying, that the opposing party's literal dying wish is to be divorced and never see a spouse of 30 plus years again. You have been visited by a bought a fake ID from the dark web. Doggo comment looking legit. Doggo or police will catch him. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.